Hello, my lovely angels. How you guys doing? You can't respond. Welcome back to the Tapped In podcast. I'm your host, Bailey. Hello, welcome back. We're getting nice and cozy today. If you're watching the video, I have my blankie. I'm in a hoodie. Life is chill, okay? Today's episode, I wanted to get into something a little niche, a little controversial, if you will. I think that this topic is something that is a brewing for all of us right now, and I really kind of just wanted to just jump right into it because I'm very passionate about this topic. So I think what kind of made me want to talk about this, honestly, was I was voice memoing my friend Andy, and we were talking about weed, and we were just talking about how weed isn't necessarily like serving him anymore. And I kind of just started to get into my lore about how I felt about weed. And I was like, you know what? I need to make this a podcast episode because I'm way too passionate about this topic to not make it a podcast episode. So that's exactly what we're getting into today. We're getting into weed, how it can serve you, how it can't, how to notice the red flags that weed is causing. This is all personal opinion, by the way, but I really want to get into why I feel like people have panic attacks and can't smoke weed. And like I said, it's all an assumption. I could easily just be, I'm just a girl on her floor. I don't know what I'm talking about, but I have a sneaky suspicion I know what's going on. So anyways, I kind of want to get into a little bit of my story, a little bit of my kind of background with weed, and then I want to kind of get into like the other stuff. So to start off, I used to be such a big pothead. Smoke ganja for breakfast. My ideal breakfast in California was coffee and a joint or a pen. I wasn't like a edible during the day kind of person. I really couldn't do that because to me edibles were for nighttime, like I'm about to munch, watch a movie and go to bed type vibe. That was what edibles gave me. I felt like weed, like grass. I'm using terms that I don't even remember using. Bud, flower, grass. Saying grass is so grandma of me. Like grass, Baeley. Young Baeley would be very disappointed in me right now. But yeah, smoking bud or a pen during the day was like ideal. With coffee. That was like my very fun morning. Like when I started the day off with that, it wasn't daily, but it was close to daily. When I started the day off with those two ingredients, it was a recipe for a great day. But yeah, so I would start the day off like that. I would kind of just like smoke throughout my day, especially if I had a pen, you know, it was really, really just kind of up for grabs, you know, whenever I'm feeling a little, it was almost like I hit it. I didn't hit it as much as someone that hits like a nicotine vape hits there, because theirs is like, I feel, depending on the person, every few minutes or at least like every hour or something. When I would hit a weed pen, it would be often. Let's just say it'd be often. But it wasn't like someone hitting a vape, but I almost took it as that. I almost took it as like, well, it's like my vape, when it's like nothing like a vape. Well, it is a vape, but it's not the same thing. Heavy on the daily use, heavy on the use before bed, heavy on the use just in general. I remember like, and I'm sure a lot of people still do this, but I just remember I would hang out with people just to smoke. We wouldn't really have a plan. We wouldn't really have anything that we're doing. We'd literally be like, you want to just hang out and smoke? And I'd be like, yeah. And smoking is the whole hangout. And again, that can be fun, but it could also not be as well. So yeah, smoking was definitely like a part of my ritual. It was part of my daily routine. And then I moved in my own apartment, which was last August. And I kind of felt a little like, before I moved by myself, I was living at home with my parents and I was still smoking weed daily. But it was getting to a point where I wasn't having fun smoking anymore. I was having so much anxiety, and I was really not feeling, I just wasn't feeling good. I wasn't feeling confident. I wasn't like feeling good about my life. I was just kind of smoking because it was part of my daily routine. And I was just like, I just want to smoke. Like, what else better is there to do? So I just remember smoking a lot. And then when I moved by myself is when I started to not reap the benefits of smoking anymore. So kind of what started happening was I would like work super late, and then I'd get off work, and then I'd smoke. And so I'd be smoking, and I'd be by myself in my own apartment, and it would just start to feel so lonely. It would just start to feel extremely depressing. I would have anxiety, and I was watching Stranger Things at the time. I was like rewatching it, and I just remember if you know Stranger Things, you know it is not a lighthearted show. Okay, there's heavy topics, there's graphic things. It's definitely not just you can just like watch it just to watch it. It is like a fun show. But it's definitely not a show that I feel like I can just put on in the midst of like not being in a good headspace already. So as I have it on, I'm super high in my apartment. Like I remember I would take like maybe like a couple day break at a time. And so when I would smoke, I would just be so high, like so high. And it just wasn't cutting it. I was just too high by myself, 2 a.m., Stranger Things, like just not a good recipe, okay? So it just like wasn't benefiting me as much as like it used to. Because I remember when I first started smoking weed, and I feel like this is like it for a lot of avid potheads, when you start smoking, you start to feel like so much happier, so much lighter, like you kind of think less. And you're just a little more creative, you're a little more giggly, you're a little more focused, like there's so many like avenues that weed can help a certain person. And for me, since I am a creative, it helped me be more creative. It helped me be more talkative. It helped me love music more than I already loved it. It helped me like really tap into my feelings, but not in a way that was scary. It helped me tap into feelings that were maybe a little, buried. And so when I would smoke, specifically with my friends, it was just such a more life expanding thing. So now when I smoke, or at the time when I was smoking in my old apartment a few months ago, and I was by myself, I just wasn't in the best headspace mentally. I just remember being like, wow, this isn't fun anymore. And I noticed that was a pattern. And so that's kind of what I wanted to get into. Whenever you notice weed is kind of not giving you the benefits that it used to, like if it's starting to feel like a chore, or if it's starting to feel like when I'm smoking, I'm starting to overanalyze my day. I'm starting to overthink how I said this. I'm starting to overthink the way that I interact with people. I'm starting to overthink everything. That to me is the biggest red flag that weed isn't serving you the way that it used to. Because I remember there'd be times that I would smoke in the beginning, and it would just make me feel so ever present and just so in the moment, so happy, joyous. Music was amazing. Life was just so blissful. Like I just remember feeling so engulfed in life when I first started smoking weed. And then towards the end, it started to feel like the opposite. Towards the end, I started to feel so detached from my connection with the divine. I started feeling so detached from my connection with myself, and I had a hard time sleeping and like staying asleep. It just wasn't a happy medium. I remember my friend that I used to smoke with, she texted me and she was like, Bailey, I've been convicted of weed. Like I can't smoke anymore. Or like, I think that I'm done with weed, at least for a little while. And I was like, you know what? This is like my only other friend that smokes weed in Florida. Like I have another friend that smokes weed in Florida, but she lives so far away. There's people in my life that smoke weed still, but they live far away from me to the point where I can't just like hang out and see them like on an average Tuesday. The friend that texted me lives the closest to me, and she told me like, I can't smoke anymore. Like, I'm just not in the headspace. Like, I've got convicted, you know? And I was like, you know what? I've been feeling this similar feeling about weed. And if you're not going to smoke anymore, then what's the point of me smoking? Like, I actually by myself. Like, I can't hang out with these friends that smoke on a daily basis. I don't want to just hang out with strangers and smoke because it's just not the same. It's not the same. So, you know what? She inspired me to just quit it. So I remember I was having such troubling thoughts in my old apartment, and I threw away all my weed stuff. I threw away every bong, every bowl, every grinder, like everything that contained a weed premise to it, I threw away. Except one thing, because I got it in Costa Rica and I just don't have the heart to throw something that I got in Costa Rica away. But regardless, everything else I threw away because it just wasn't in my best interest to keep it all because it was too tempting. So I threw it all away, and I was really happy that I did. And then, you know, as time was going on, I was like, okay, I'm bored. You know, I want something. So then I started drinking wine. And let me just say, replacing something with something else is probably the worst thing that you can do. I feel like the best thing to replace, and this is not even a good thing, but I feel like the best thing to replace with any addictive thing is caffeine. Don't drink caffeine at 2 a.m. though. Like, to me, what I kind of have replaced my attachment of like something external, it's been caffeine. And that's not advice. That's just me saying that if you feel like that you like, no, I have to smoke nicotine. No, I have to smoke weed. Like, try to find something else, maybe healthier. Like, maybe get addicted to like meditating or something. But like, to me, what really, really helped me kind of like detach from weed was me looking forward to like my morning coffee, which is like, not the healthiest option. I would not advise anyone to get addicted to caffeine, but if there's anything, at least it's like a cute little morning coffee, and it's not like your lungs. You know what I mean? Just as long as you eat something with coffee, I think that you should be totally fine. But again, not advice, not substituting something for something else. I would just advise to not even at all. But yeah, so I just remember feeling so I'm not gonna lie, after I threw away all of that stuff, I still smoked. There were times I still smoked. There was times that I smoked with somebody. I did get some weed. It was a very, very tiny amount, but I did buy some weed in that chunk of time. And, you know, I got a little one hitter or whatever. And I bought some Delta 8 edibles. Don't buy Delta 8 edibles. Disgusting. Actually, the grossest thing I could have ever done. It was so gross. But then I started noticing myself falling back, not back into the trap like smoking daily, but I started noticing myself like getting high and then being like, okay, but like, why am I high? And then that is another red flag that I think if you start to notice yourself like getting high and you're just kind of like, I was fine before this. Like, before smoking, I wasn't overanalyzing in my day, and now I'm overanalyzing my day. Like, what happened? And it's literally because you smoked. And to me, hear me out, okay? I think the spiritual reason and like the energetic reason why I feel like that weed kind of doesn't serve its purpose like it used to is because I think since weed is a plant medicine, I look at it less like a drug and more of a spiritual, feminine plant. And so when I look at weed and when I think about weed and when I have done deep spiritual work with weed, whether smoking it and or not smoking it, and just kind of analyzing my relationship with it, the conclusion I've come to, let me back up a little bit. The conclusion I've come to is I think when we get to a point where weed isn't serving us anymore, she's done the job. She's done what she's needed to do. And then I think we get to a point where we start to overuse it. And then we start to overdo what her service was. And I think that weed, comes into our life in a period of time that might be organic and natural. And, sometimes weed comes into people's lives that are sick and they need it and it helps them, it aids them. And then I also think weed comes into people's lives when they're hanging out with a boyfriend, hanging out with a partner, hanging out with friends, and they're in high school or they're a young adult or they're an adult. And weed starts to aid them in their journey, whether they want it to be, whether they think it's spiritual or not. I truly do think that weed and God comes into people's lives for a very specific reason. And I think that God does things all for a specific reason. I don't think anything happens randomly. Nothing's a coincidence to me. So when I look at weed, I just think so much about how, it served its purpose. And to me, when I think about my journey in the beginning, weed really, really helped me craft my creativity. Weed really helped me come to terms with, I love music. I love being around music. I love singing. I love being a muse. I love posing. I love makeup. I love just expressing myself creatively through all these fun little avenues. And yes, I love film. Yes, I love to eat. Yes, I love to cook. There are also the fun parts about weed, which is the relaxing, the eating, the driving around listening to music, and that kind of vibe. So there's that aspect of weed that I really, really feel like that it helped me channel, and it helped me channel a fun young adult life. Since alcohol's never really been my thing, and I'm so grateful that it hasn't, weed really was that one source for me to kind of be, and I don't think you need a substance to be young and young, wild, and free. I don't think that you need a substance attachment. I really, really don't. But it's so common these days that I just feel like me being attached to weed for a period of time was something that I was really grateful, and am really grateful that it was weed and not alcohol or coke or a cigarette or nicotine or whatever. I'm glad that it was weed, because weed really served its purpose. So I feel like we all get to a point in life where weed kind of stops serving the purpose that she came here for. And I feel like when we stop needing weed, we've surpassed a level of spiritual growth. And again, this could totally be, this is an assumption, okay? This is just a hypothesis from Bailey's mind, and I could easily be wrong, okay? But something that has just come to the surface for me is that weed serves its purpose. So for me, weed showed me my creativity. It showed me what I love. It showed me kind of things that I already knew, but it made it fun in the process. And then once it served its purpose, when I would start to smoke, it was almost like she was like, what am I doing in here? It's almost like there were things coming up for me that I was so uncomfortable with, because all she had left was the uncomfortable stuff that I didn't want to deal with yet, or that I wasn't ready to deal with, So when I think about the way weed affected me, living on my own, and then now, and I would get so uncomfortable and anxious, to me it was I was thinking that weed was starting to serve its purpose in a sense of deep inner feelings that just were not ready to come up. And weed is kind of rushing the process, because it's a medicine. It's a plant medicine that helps aid in spiritual and physical health. And I think that when it's used in a way that might be a little recreational, a little too recreational, then I think it starts to make you feel why am I so paranoid about the way that I would talk today? Or why am I so paranoid about this situation? I know I need to work this out. Why am I overthinking it, or like, why am I thinking about this person right now, or all this stuff. Like, why are we thinking about these situations? And it's like, oh, it's because I'm high, and so you start to kind of just completely overthink. And I've had way too many situations that I'm smoking weed and I have a complete revelation. And to me, that is why I think weed is so spiritual, because when I did smoke weed for like the last few months of me smoking, I would have these crazy revelations while also having major anxiety. And so that's why I feel like it's such a spiritual thing. Like, the plant's trying to show me something, and it shows me something, but then in the process of showing me, I have major anxiety because it's surfacing feelings that I haven't investigated yet. So I think that when weed shows me these feelings, I'm super uncomfortable, I'm anxious, and then all of a sudden I'm stuck in this high, and I have to pretty much wait for the come down in order to like feel better. When originally, before smoking, I was fine. Like, I know like maybe these feelings are buried deep and I need to like talk about it and I need to resurface them, but that can happen in my own timing. I don't need a substance to surface it right now in this very moment at the end of the day. Like, I'm tired. You know what I mean? So I feel like weed serves its purpose for a chunk of time, whether that be years, whether that be months, whether it be one time. And then I think that once it like eventually starts to move through you in a way that's uncomfortable, then I feel like you might be overdoing it and fast tracking your spiritual growth. And so I also wanted to get into why I think people that don't normally smoke or take an edible or something, and then they have a horrible anxiety feeling. I think that this comes from the fact that weed is trying to move through you in a way that is so deep. And for me, when I started smoking, it was a very creative, beautiful, fun, exciting thing. But then when I was towards the end starting to feel all those anxious feelings and anxiety, and I was greening out and all of this stuff, like, I think that I was also going through a lot in that time period. I was moving into my own apartment. I was, working a job that's paying my rent. I was, I moved out from my parents' house. I'm going to school. Like, I was doing so much. And then I think that when I would smoke, I wasn't getting the like end of the day feeling. I was getting very, very, very in my head about everything that I needed to do and get done and that I didn't do, and then all of this stuff. There was a pile up. And I think that when I, got to that headspace, it just was not fun. And I can totally see why people have problems with weed. So when I think about and look at and listen to people's stories of people smoking weed and they green out and they never smoke again because they had a horrible experience, I think it's because that spiritually there's a lot that's undone, and spiritually there is a lot that hasn't been looked at and worked through. When at the time when I was smoking weed, I was doing a spiritual journey. I was actively in a spiritual journey. Weed just helped aid that spiritual journey in a creative way. I think that if someone is not in a spiritual journey whatsoever, and not even really like, and I don't want to, because a lot of people start to smoke weed and aren't on a spiritual journey. They just like want to have fun and smoke, and then they have a good time and smoke. But I think that there are certain people that have a certain headspace and a certain mindset, and when they smoke, they instantly have what I had towards the end, which is just the major anxiety, the major overthinking. And so to me, that kind of makes me look at it, okay, like maybe you just weren't, maybe your spirit just wasn't and might not be ever ready for weed. Like maybe your spirit just doesn't resonate with weed in order to need it. And I think that is such a beautiful thing, because we're all so different. Like we all just move through this life so differently. Like there are some people that thrive smoking weed, and then there are some people that just don't. And I find it so beautiful that we all are so different. But I think that there are just certain souls that might be a little more, that might just, I don't want to even say souls, but there might just be certain bodies and energetic mindsets that are so different, so that when they smoke weed can't move through them, because maybe they try to have so much control over their daily life. Maybe they try to have so much control in so many different areas of life that it's almost like the plant is trying to aid in like letting it go, but instead of being like let go and relax, it's surfacing everything up that they want to have control over so badly. And instead of looking at it as, oh, this plant is trying to show me something, they're looking at it as, I have anxiety right now. And rightfully so, because when you have anxiety from weed, it is so just overpowering. It is just so, it just overtakes you. And you can't help but just want to shrivel up and not think about it, because you're just so like, oh my goodness, this just does not feel good. So yeah, I just really, really, really think that weed does what she's meant to do for certain people. And then I also think she does what she's meant to do for the people that don't end up smoking and or be potheads. If someone ends up smoking weed and they have a horrible time and never smoke weed again, I also think that weed served her purpose then. Because people could say like, oh, I smoked it, I hate weed, like it just didn't do good. Or people could say, when I smoked, I felt so anxious about this, and this. And then I think when they're sober again, they're like, oh God, I'm so glad I'm not high. Like I'm never smoking again. Or they could have a revelation and be like, wow, like this plant showed me so many things about my life. And it showed me so many things about just myself that it really surfaced a lot. And honestly, thank you, weed, for showing me everything that I was bottling up. And I just wanted to make this podcast to also, you know, say I'm not perfect, and I'm not saying that I'm never going to smoke again. I definitely see myself being that person that'll be in a recreational state or, you know, on vacation or whatever, and like maybe I'll smoke a joint or two, but like it's not a part of my daily routine anymore. And it feels really good to not feel forced into spiritual growth and let it kind of just naturally flow through me praying or reading the Bible, or just me having an average day, and then boom, something pops into my head, like, and I'm like, oh, okay, that's something that I need to work through. Okay. Or mostly when I'm meditating, something comes up when I'm meditating and I'm like, okay, we need to work through that, you know? But I think that weed really did what she had to do, and weed really showed me that I can be creative and I am as beautiful as people tell me, or I am as beautiful as, you know, my soul tells me, and not my stupid little thoughts that try to make me feel smaller than I actually am. And weed showed me that I am creative and I am, you know, an eccentric person. And weed showed me a lot about myself that I choose to not look at before I smoked weed. So weed showed me a lot about myself, and it was such a beautiful way to get in community. It was such a beautiful way to get to know someone. It was such a beautiful way to connect. Like, weed is such a beautiful communal thing, and that's why I advise, if you are struggling with smoking weed, I would advise, like, have it be a community thing. Like, have it kind of be something that if someone invites you to, like, a bonfire or something, and like there's a joint going around, if you used to smoke and you're comfortable and you're like, hey, it's been a while, go ahead. I think that, to me, smoking communally is so different than smoking alone. And I think when you smoke alone, that's kind of when the thoughts start to race, and that's when your brain is kind of starting to get a little scattered, if you will, or just a lot happening all at once. And I think that when you're with community, you have people around you to ground you, and you have community to kind of bring you back, especially if they're also smoking. Because I've noticed when I smoke and I'm with a sober person, I completely overthink me smoking, and I'm like, oh my gosh, like, I can't believe I'm so high and they're just like sober, like, ah. And then the whole, like, I kind of wish I was sober, like, thought comes into my head. And so that's why I think that if you're, like, I remember when I was in California, I would do these marijuana meditations, and it was so freaking beautiful. I literally would have the most beautiful revelations and the most beautiful meditations with the sound bowl. And it was just such a, like, that I have to do again. And that's why I'm saying I'm never going to smoke again, because I'd be lying. I may have to smoke again so that way I can do the marijuana meditations. Okay. They were so beautiful, so transformative. But when it comes to like daily use, it's just not a part of my daily use anymore. And who knows, maybe that'll change as well. Maybe I'll go on vacation and go to a recreational state and be like, you know what? I don't need weed. I'm chilling. I'm good. You know, like, I think that like whatever's meant to be will be. I'm not putting any pressure on myself, but I'm also not putting any pressure on myself to be perfect. I'm not putting any pressure on myself to like be someone that I'm not necessarily ready to be yet. And I think that, you know, taking it one step, one day at a time has been the best, because it's given me a chance to really look inward and be like, do I need to smoke right now? No. I can chill. I can just chill. I can literally just sit on the couch. I can literally just stretch. I can shower. I can eat. I can do things without having to be high. And then as soon as I came to that revelation, slowly but surely, it got me out of the headspace of feeling like weed is the only way to relax into let's find other ways to relax, you know? And it was just a beautiful, like, transition. It wasn't rushed. It wasn't forced. Of course, I had to push myself to do it, but it wasn't necessarily something that if I made a mistake, I would get on myself, or, you know, if I, like, didn't smoke, I'd be like, oh, I wish I smoked last night. Like, no, like, it has bled into such a beautiful reunion between me and weed and my spirit. And I just really think that regardless of what the future holds, I love what I've been able to craft being someone that has come from the attachment to weed. And I think that'll happen for you. You just have to trust the process, you know, pray about it. Be like, God, I feel like I'm using weed in a sense that's a little more, like I'm a little more dependent on weed than I am on you. Lord, help me transition from a time period of me overusing it to not even remembering to smoke. And Lord, please be there for me in the midst of me wishing I was high. Please protect my spirit in those moments, so that way when I do feel the need to get high, your spirit lifts me high and I don't have to inject anything into my lungs. In Jesus' name, amen. But yeah, I think that it can come in time and you don't have to rush yourself to, you know, do it. Of course, like if it's like super duper bad, then obviously I'm coming from someone that doesn't have like an addictive, like, I don't want to say I don't have an addictive personality, but I also don't want to say that I do. So it's like a weird, because I feel like there are people that have way worse addictions. And for me, I slowly just drifted away. You know, like it wasn't like, oh, I have to quit this cold turkey. It wasn't like that. It was smooth. It was chill, you know, like it was just such a smooth transition. So if you're someone like me who just would smoke daily because you liked to smoke, and you smoke daily because you're just like, it's part of the routine, like whatever, but you're starting to notice your spirit is a little shaken when you smoke, then I'm kind of speaking to those people. I'm not really speaking to the people that have like an actual addicted issue with like weed and maybe other substances like that. I don't know what the process might be for that. I just don't think you might need to go to rehab for weed. I just don't know. To me, like weed kind of includes you. Like if you need to go to rehab, I assume you're doing other things as well. Like, I don't know, maybe that's a different, I don't know. There's just certain things I don't know. And that is one of them. So, this video might not be monetized, because I said it a lot in this episode, didn't I? Well, whatever. I just really wanted to make this episode for not just me and my future self being able to look back and be proud of myself, but also I made this episode for people that might feel like that they have a weird relationship with weed, but they don't want to stop smoking, but they also know that smoking isn't necessarily aiding them anymore. So I wanted to make this podcast episode for you to know that it's okay to take your time. It's okay to slow the pace instead of just quitting it cold turkey. It's okay to, smoke communally. It's okay. But I think that if you're starting to notice it not aiding your journey anymore, especially if you're smoking like maybe less and less, and you're still kind of like smoking once a month maybe, or once a week, or you're smoking with a community and it's still not aiding you, then I definitely think that that is a chance to kind of journal and look inward and be like, okay, like, why is weed not serving me anymore? But if you do notice yourself kind of retracting from smoking, and you smoke maybe once a week, maybe you smoke once a month, and you start to kind of just feel a lot better, you start to feel a little more lax, you smoke with community and you feel like you can have a good time, then I think that that is a different story. I think that you maybe just needed to recreate the schedule with weed instead of having it be daily. But for me, I think that I just kind of need to let it happen naturally. I'm not going to go out of my way to buy it. I'm not going to go out of my way to, see who's selling or see who has a medical card or anything. I think I'm just going to like let it happen naturally, and then, whatever's meant to be will be, not abuse the grace that God gives, but also not get hard on myself. But yeah, I love you guys so much. I really, really hope I helped somebody with this episode. I feel like it felt a little niche, like I said in the beginning. I think that there are a lot of people these days like going on tea breaks and not smoking anymore and or wanting to take a break. And I think that there's just something spiritual going on in the ethers. And I think that we're all kind of starting to realize that weed isn't really serving that purpose that it used to anymore. And we'll always love her. We'll always appreciate her. But I feel like that for a lot of us, she served her purpose, and now we kind of need to step into that other level of spirituality. So thank you guys so much for tapping in to the Tapped In podcast. I'll see you next time. Bye.